You and your coworker make the exact same salary, same company, same job title, same paycheck hits the bank on the same day every 2 weeks. But somehow, 5 years from now, their life looks completely different from yours. They own a home, they take real vacations, they talk about retiring early like it's actually a plan, and you're still wondering where the money went. This isn't about luck. It isn't about income. It's about something far deeper. Something happening inside the brain long before a single dollar is ever spent. What if the real difference between broke and wealthy isn't money at all? What if it's the way two people see money completely differently, using the same eyes, the same numbers, and the same paycheck? Here's what most people never figure out. Your relationship with money was built before you ever earned a single dollar. Psychologist Brad Klontz, who spent over 2 decades studying what he calls money scripts, found that most people's core beliefs about money are formed between the ages of 0 and 8. 0 and 8? You weren't reading financial books, you weren't calculating compound interest, you were watching your parents argue about a credit card bill. You were hearing someone say, "We can't afford that." You were absorbing invisible rules that no one ever told you existed. Klontz identified 4 money scripts that govern most people's financial behavior: money avoidance, money worship, money status, and money vigilance. Most people never know which script is running their life, but that script is executing every time you open your banking app, every time you swipe your card, every time you tell yourself you'll start saving next month. Your coworker isn't smarter than you. They're not more disciplined. They just happen to be running a different script. Think about the last time you got a raise. What happened next? For most people, something automatic kicks in. A nicer apartment suddenly seems reasonable. The car payment goes up slightly. Subscriptions multiply. Dinner out becomes more frequent. Income rises and expenses rise to match it almost immediately. Economists call this lifestyle inflation. But that word inflation makes it sound like something that happens to you. It doesn't happen to you. You choose it, unconsciously, because your brain doesn't experience a raise as security, it experiences it as permission. This is the core difference. Wealthy thinkers experience money as a tool. Broke thinkers, and this is not an insult, it's a neurological pattern, experience money as an emotion. James Grubman, a psychologist who spent over 2 decades studying what he calls ultra-high net worth families, puts it this way. People who grow up without money develop what he calls an immigrant mindset towards wealth, even if they were born in the same country as their wealthy neighbor. They treat money like a visitor that might leave at any moment, so they spend it before it disappears. They buy now because waiting feels like a risk. The emotional pull of now versus later is not a character flaw. It is a survival mechanism that worked perfectly in a world of scarcity. It just doesn't work in a world where compound interest exists. Your coworker who is quietly building wealth is not suppressing this instinct. They've replaced it with a different one. Behavioral economist Richard Thaler, who won the Nobel Prize in Economics in 2017, discovered something called mental accounting. It sounds technical. It isn't. What it means is this. Your brain doesn't treat all money the same. $100 you earned feels different from $100 you won. Money in your checking account feels different from money in a retirement fund. Money you got as a birthday gift feels more spendable than money you budgeted for groceries. These aren't logical distinctions, they're emotional ones, and they control everything. Here's how mental accounting plays out in 2 lives running on the same salary. Person A gets a tax refund. Their brain registers it as a bonus, as found money, as something separate from their real money, so they spend it. It feels almost irresponsible not to enjoy it. Person B gets the same refund. Their brain registers it as their own money that was temporarily held by the government, so they redirect it. They don't feel the same emotional pressure to spend it because to them it was already spent. It was already allocated in their mental accounts before it arrived. Same deposit, completely different reality. But here is where it gets even stranger. It's not just about spending. It's about what money means to your sense of self. When broke thinking takes over, money becomes identity. The car you drive signals who you are. The neighborhood you live in signals who you are. The watch, the shoes, the restaurant. These aren't purchases, they're statements. And the devastating irony is that this pattern costs more than just money. It costs momentum. Every dollar spent on signaling status is a dollar not building the invisible architecture that eventually produces passive income. Researcher Thomas Stanley spent decades studying American millionaires and published his findings in a book that many people have heard of but few have actually absorbed. What he found shattered the popular image of wealth. Most American millionaires drive used cars. They live in ordinary neighborhoods. They don't wear their net worth. They have quietly and systematically separated their identity from their spending. And that separation is worth, in some cases, millions of dollars over a lifetime. You are spending money to look wealthy. They are spending money to become wealthy. Those are not the same activity. Now here's the counterintuitive part. The wealthy don't actually think about money more than broke people. They think about it less. When you live paycheck to paycheck, money is a constant presence in your mind. It is the subject of anxiety at 2 a.m. It is the reason you avoid looking at your bank account. It drains cognitive bandwidth that could go towards everything else. Princeton economist Sendhil Nathan and behavioral scientist Eldar Shafir studied this extensively and found that financial scarcity literally reduces cognitive capacity, not because poor people are less capable, but because the mental load of managing scarcity consumes the same mental resources that are needed for decision-making, patience, and long-term thinking. This is the cruelest part of the cycle. The less money you have, the harder it becomes to think in the ways that would help you get more. So what breaks the cycle? It is not motivation. Motivation is unreliable. It comes and it goes. It spikes after a documentary and disappears by Friday. It is not willpower. Willpower is a finite resource. It depletes, and financial decisions don't wait for you to be rested and calm. What breaks the cycle is architecture, structural change. The wealthy person isn't more disciplined at the moment of decision. They've reduced the number of decisions by automating the outcome. The money moves before they see it. The investment happens before the spending is possible. The system is designed so that the default behavior produces the right result, even on a lazy Tuesday when motivation is nowhere to be found. This is what your coworker understood, quietly, without making a big announcement about it. They didn't cut back on coffee. They restructured the system. They made the boring, invisible choice, and then they stopped thinking about it. And here's the thing that no one tells you. The gap between your life and your coworker's life is not growing because they're earning more. The gap is growing because time is applying compound math to the decisions they made 3 years ago. The money they put away when it felt small is no longer small, and the money you spent when it felt fine has been gone for 3 years, unavailable, unable to grow, unable to work, silent. Every month that passes, the gap becomes slightly harder to close. Not impossible, but harder. Because wealth is not a product of income, it is a product of time multiplied by behavior. You and your coworker started with the same number, the same salary, the same opportunities, the same paycheck. But somewhere along the way, you started playing 2 completely different games with the same chips. The question isn't whether you make enough money. You probably do. The question is, which money script is running in the background of every single financial decision you make today? Because that script, the one written in you before you were old enough to understand money, is still running right now. And unlike your salary, that script you can actually change.